This is On the Line, and I'm Eric Felton. The First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution not only protects freedom of speech, but also freedom of religion. What does freedom of religion mean in American law and society? I'll ask my guest, Nina Shea, Director of the Center for Religious Freedom at the Hudson Institute, where she's a senior fellow. Welcome and thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure. It's great to be here.
So, Nina, the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment, the first set of rights enumerated there in the Constitution, really begins with freedom of religion, even before freedom of speech. And the way the U.S. Constitution puts it is that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Why did the authors of the Constitution put freedom of religion first, and why did they put it in the kind of terms that they put it?
Well, the founders came from a group of people who came to the United States precisely to escape the religious wars and religious oppression going on in Europe at that time. And there was protection of Christianity and certain expressions of Christianity in every country in Europe. 400 or so years ago, there were tremendous wars. And they wanted to escape that. And many generations of Americans from all over the world have come here for that reason as well. But anyhow, they had the foresight to see that this was a key problem, a bedrock issue for democracy and freedom. They phrased it in that way because they were concerned not with protecting religious institutions, not religion per se, but protecting the rights of the individual to hold or choose their religion and to practice it. Not just pray within the four walls of a church, but to preach or to designate leaders or to share faith with others. So it's a very critical and really a sacred principle for Americans down through the centuries.
How has the freedom of religion been interpreted over the years, the constitutional doctrine? Has it changed dramatically? Has it expanded?
Well, the United States never had blasphemy laws on a national level. Some states did, and those have been either declared unconstitutional or thrown out, basically, since then. And so today there is no punishment for blasphemy or religious insult in the United States in any local level or national level. And over time, the United States has expanded, the population has expanded. People from all parts of the world are now here and citizens. And so the number of faiths expressed here are quite varied. In the beginning, it was mostly or almost entirely Christians, a few Jews who were citizens. And, but there were even tensions within the Christian churches. And now we're able to see how this amendment, this freedom has allowed us to accommodate all different faiths so that we have mosques and temples and churches side by side, even in the city of Washington.
And now, in the dispute over this internet video, the issue keeps coming up that freedom of religion in many people's conception needs to be something more robust that goes to the extent of protecting the individual, protecting the religion from insult, that freedom of religion means freedom from a sort of harm against one's religion.
That's right. There's been a conflation or an overlap in perception of my feelings are hurt because my religion is hurt, and therefore the right to religious freedom means protecting my religion. That's totally incompatible with individual freedom. You can't have both a protection in a pluralistic society. You cannot have protection of a religious institution and protection of individual rights. It's absolutely incompatible. And one or another will be supreme. So you will either have a theocratic system or a democratic system, but you can't have a blend. It's very protean. These claims to insult grow over time. They can include, in Afghanistan, the rights of women. If you talk about expanding women's rights, some of these journalists have been put on trial for their lives for blasphemy. In Saudi Arabia, some people have put in prison for calling for a constitutional monarchy on the basis that this is un-Islamic speech or terminology. It's a very expansive notion because these religions, all main religions, are very complex belief systems covering many areas of life. And if you're going to protect all the principles and tenets of these religions, you're going to take off the table many, many different aspects of daily life, of political life, of social life and cultural life from discussion and debate. And so that shuts down free speech and freedom of religion for the individual. It also stunts society. And I think of the words of Abdurrahman Wahid, who was the former president of Indonesia and a great Muslim scholar, who also contributed to my recent book, Silenced, about blasphemy laws. He said that these kind of blasphemy laws in the Muslim world have imprisoned Muslims in a stifling chamber of dogmatism. And it has stunted economic growth and political growth.
Now, you've been doing outreach in the Muslim world and communicating with Pakistani media, for example, where you've been getting a sense of how people view this debate. What have you been hearing from people when you do chats with Pakistani media?
Yeah, it's fascinating. After the video, the horrendous video that came out a few weeks ago, we engaged in a web chat in Pakistan. And people there, it was actually very encouraging to us because people there really wanted to know how freedom of speech is dealt with in the United States, or how does a moderate Muslim country like Indonesia work these issues.
President Obama this week at the UN talked about how, quote,
"The majority of Americans are Christian, and yet we do not ban blasphemy against our most sacred beliefs."
Is that interpreted as somehow in America people don't care enough about religion to take it seriously enough to be to promote blasphemy? Is that what the U.S. doctrine is about? Is sort of not taking religion seriously enough?
Well, I think that a lot of people who haven't been to the United States confuse us with Europe in a way, and it's very interesting because Europe has laws that ban blasphemy in some countries still to this day, and then they have religious hate speech laws, but yet their people are probably less Christian and less religious than Americans, who have no legal protections for religious institutions or religious principles. Of course, we have laws against violence or discrimination, religious-based discrimination, but not against speech. And yet Americans are extremely religious, church-going people, and for the Christian population, and religious for all sorts of faiths. So I think that would be a misperception if that's what people think, that the reason it's precisely the opposite. It's because we do care about religion that we don't want the government, our government, or some elected leaders regulating what religious doctrine is and regulating speech about it. We want to be able to speak freely about our faith and have our churches operate, and mosques and synagogues, temples, operate without the interference of government.
Why should someone in a majority Muslim country who may want their country to be an Islamic nation, why should they care about the sense of religious freedom that the U.S. Constitution enshrines? Is there anything attractive about that to the person who wants an Islamic country?
Well, we all live in a very pluralistic and small world these days with electronic and social media. And so we're going to be interacting. And if even in a very homogeneous culture, there are different ideas, and there's an interest in sharing with the outside world, whether through trade or travel. and learning and education. So ideas cannot be contained, and I think the President said this week at the UN, is that really we cannot contain speech anymore with this new technology, and nobody really wants to. And if you want to see your economy develop and people investing from abroad, if you want to be welcomed in other countries, toleration of criticism on all sorts of levels is going to have to be accepted. We're going to have to all work to be more tolerant of each other, but to react with violence, of course, is always wrong, but also to have the state punish individuals for criticizing a religion or some aspect of religion or some principle of religion or some leader who's leading in the name of religion. We have a rise now of a lot of Islamist parties, an empowerment of Islamist governments in many countries now, and you know, we saw that in the Arab Spring with Egypt and Tunisia. And does this mean that these leaders now and these governments are completely inured or walled off from all criticism? I mean, if so, then we're talking about more of a tyrannical situation than a real democracy.
Nina Shea is director of the Center for Religious Freedom at the Hudson Institute and also author of the book Silenced. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Great to be with you.
Thanks.